Are you a chronic worrier or overthinker? This next title promises to explain brain-based techniques to uproot anxiety at its source. Welcome to Audiobook Reviews in 5. This is Yana, also known as Jana, and in today's episode, I'm reviewing Unwinding Anxiety. New science shows how to break the cycles of worry and fear to heal your mind. Written and read by Judson Brewer. At the end of Unwinding Anxiety, addiction psychiatrist and neuroscientist Judson Brewer reveals he was inspired to dedicate this book to an Amazon reviewer who accused him of intentionally withholding information in Judson's first book, The Craving Mind. Apparently, it didn't live up to its subtitle of explaining how we can break bad habits. I haven't read that book, but I appreciate Brewer's motivation to make things right by explaining the how in Unwinding Anxiety. After listening to this title, I have a much more concrete understanding of how habits form in my life, but more importantly, how I can break those habits for good by applying my curiosity and kindness in very practical ways. Brewer explains how we mistakenly attempt to use willpower, avoidance, or replacing bad habits with seemingly benign habits. Think of smokers who replace cigarettes with toothpicks, or how you might habitually turn to a specific soothing behavior when anxious thoughts arise. These approaches don't actually help us break our habit loop because our brain is wired for reward and likes to automate everything once a reward loop is established. While the replacement habits may seem benign, like someone who tries to switch from snacking on candy to carrots, the habit loop itself remains unbroken, leaving us more likely to revert to the original bad habit when stressed. Brewer explains step by step how we can use mindfulness to first identify our habit loops and then use curiosity to unwind those habits and ultimately break them for good. If we want to break a habit loop, first we have to map its cause and effect. Then we should relive its perceived reward in a process Judson describes as disenchantment, which he compares to discovering that Santa Claus is not real. There's no going back to believing in Santa or that your bad habit is pleasurable once you've experienced that disenchantment with a habit your mind previously perceived as a reward. This is what I've struggled with in the past because I've attempted to reason with myself instead of focusing on whatever I was experiencing. Brewer uses data to illustrate that most people, after mindfully practicing any bad habit 20 times or so in this way, are far less likely to feel compelled to do it again. So, how is anxiety implicated in this? Anxious feelings can lead to worrying as an attempt at problem solving, or even a distraction from feeling another unpleasant emotion. Worrying feels productive, so the behavior becomes cyclical. After all, worrying is doing something, and when we become conditioned to feeling worry or anxiety as a normal state, we may also believe our anxiety drives us towards success or avoiding danger. But this is simply another habit loop that can be unlearned with practice. Brewer admits that it takes months of mindful practice to break these habit loops, but by adding curiosity and kindness into the process, there's a reward system that helps reinforce the shift away from anxious rumination. I've listened to a lot of podcasts and books about mindfulness, but what I distinctly enjoyed about this audiobook was how Brewer uses storytelling and simple analogy to illustrate key concepts. For example, he compares the mindful process of unwinding our habit loops to using bicycle or car gears. His sense of humor and narration style also made this a deeply enjoyable listen. My main critique of this book is that Brewer glosses over social context, like access to healthcare services or the implications of poverty. His examples are his patients and professional peers, not people experiencing homelessness or bankruptcy due to medical bills, or those living in a migrant detention center, for example. This narrow view is a problem with the self-help genre in general, though, which tends to imply or outright preach that individuals can overcome mental and emotional obstacles with enough elbow grease and a positive attitude. There's also little discussion on how Brewer's approach complements or supplements medication or other forms of therapy. That said, I enjoyed this title because Brewer's ideas were clearly explained and useful to me, especially his reframing of mindfulness. If you're curious to try Brewer's approach to unwinding anxiety, improving eating habits, or quitting smoking, check out his website, which I've linked to in my show notes. This includes practically designed apps for your smartphone that offer free course modules and other tools. That's all for this episode of Audiobook Reviews in 5. Thanks for listening. If you've not yet done so, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Audiobook Reviews in 5 on Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and many others. By subscribing, you help increase the profile of this podcast and chances of other listeners finding it. I look forward to checking in with you all again soon. Please stay safe and be well.